Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another part of the Godwars series. One of the most classic and oldest tropes of any Godwars story is the classic the old gods versus the new gods. And on one side you have the original gods, the primordial gods, the original gods, the creator gods, the first ones, if you will. And then on the other side, you've got the young gods, the new ones, the upstarts, if you will, that have come about by the races of your world, either having heroes that divine ascend and go off and create their own little factions or their own little new religions, or some other factor that causes new religions to spout up, to spring forth on your world. And obviously the old gods don't want to share power, maybe a little here and there, obviously, with the lesser deities and demigods and their high priests and things like that. But you're going to find that it's a very easy situation to nurture if that's what you're shooting for, especially if you're desiring to run a Godwars campaign or even a mini campaign, one shot. I don't really think that's viable unless it's just the actual battle between the gods themselves, which I've done, where I handed out a bunch of players character sheets of gods with all their abilities and powers, and then brought them to the table and situated them on the map or the board and let them have at it, which is ultimately something that you might want to do to have your big epic battle at the end to decide who gets to stick around and who gets banished to Hades or utterly destroyed, or however you want to work that out. I actually had some pardon the smoke alarm. I have to go and change every single one of them this week. I've had various results at the end, but that's actually a video later on down the road. It's going to be up to you and the players to decide who wins and who loses, who's going to actually take part. You are going to have some deities that want to sit on the sidelines, fence sit, that sort of thing. They may very well be playing the long game and expect to actually outlast the war and still be sticking around. Maybe they're in hiding. Maybe they just, hope nobody notices that they're not picking a side, or maybe they're going to pick a side later, trying to figure out who's most likely to come out on top, and they'll join that side, or maybe swing the tide in the favor of the other side, whatever side that may be. In a God War, it's not going to just be the deities versus deities, because otherwise the old gods would just win. That's a guarantee. They have the power, the experience, and quite possibly the numbers. But it's the numbers that are really going to make up the difference when their minions and their followers down on the world decide to start attacking each other's the enemy's followers. Like, say you've got temples to the old gods, and the young gods for whatever reason become more prolific, or just decide to sneak attack the old gods' temples and churches and go to war with the people. The people are the power behind the gods. Without the people, the gods often derive their power from the worship and the energy expended in doing so, and then it's siphoned up to the gods, and that's kind of like their food and drink, if you will. So during a God Wars, it's going to be more down on the earthly level, with the pawns and pieces vying for control and maybe going into an all-out war. And to do so, you're going to have to create the different religions and the factions, the armies, and where they're placed, and who's strong here or there, where they're weak, and allow the players to lead those armies, and where they choose to strike will vastly affect how the overall war goes. If one greater god loses 50-70% of their worshippers, they may still be the old god, but they're now deprived of their daily source of power, and that could allow for the eventual defeat of one old god or another. So you're going to want to take all of that into account. How strong are the new gods? How strong are the old gods? And what is it about the new gods that gives them even a fighting chance in this new religion? Is it just superior numbers? Is it an ideology that's time has come and the old ways need to be put on the shelf and make way for progress? Or is it going to be, maybe it's something like the orcs have just created so many orcs that they could just sweep across the land, taking out the old gods, and now the new gods have to spring up and defend the old gods, or maybe just replace them as the sole survivors because the old gods are dead and now new heroes are born during the conflict, and then maybe they divine ascend or are elevated to lesser demigod or even greater god status if their numbers are sufficient to warrant that. I'm going to go into a system that I use to determine the power levels and the whole divine ascension. Obviously, I use a great deal of the deities and demigods rules set and ideology of how gods are created and how player characters can become gods, because that's a big part of a god war, is bringing up, elevating, divine ascending or divine descending your player characters in to fill those spots, or maybe create new spots of their own. I've even seen it where a group of player characters became a whole new pantheon unto themselves, obviously having to retire their characters until such time as they are needed, and then the next campaign can literally revolve around new player characters as worshippers or followers of the new gods and help them gain in power. But it's all going to boil down to, do you want the old gods to stick around? Do you want the new gods to replace them? Or in a more sandbox type game, are you going to just let the chips fall where they may? You'll often find that there will be a mixture of both old and new gods surviving. Maybe even, your great creator god who created all of it is still up there just watching, looking and seeing what's going on, and maybe not getting involved, or maybe picking a side, or just staying as the mysterious great creator and letting things unfold naturally. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you're interested in running a god war. If you've ever run a god war, I'm working on a campaign right now for the D&D world. It'll actually be a retrospective, a god war in the past, but I will run it sometime in the future to determine what really happened in the god war to help mold the world that I'm running. But down there in the insults section below, let me know what you think, what you've done, what you'd like to do, and if you need any help running one, you know where to go. Right here, Shadow and Sun will always be here to help you out with any of your gaming questions. But until next time, have a great weekend. I will see you guys Saturday. Happy trails.